Shawn, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a while. I think it was the end of last year when we talked about workplace violence, going beyond just showing the run, hide, fight video at, the workplace, checking that box, how we need to constantly be revisiting that and going a little deeper. So every time we talk, we've joked about this several times. Every time we're on the phone, we should probably be recording it because we go like all over the place, and like we can divvy up those conversations into like several like high value episodes. So it's kind of funny every time we get on the phone, right? We have some crazy discussions.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't help with my mild dose of ADD. So,
Well, that's great though. I think we could probably have our own type of podcast where it's just us, like you say on your podcast, running our mouths, right?
yeah. We didn't we talk about that before?
Yeah, we
I
did.
think we mentioned
I'm
that.
sure. Yeah, I think we probably did. It's hilarious because just the other, well, I'm trying to think. Last time we talked, we talked about some crazy stuff, but we're going to talk about, and that brings us to this episode, right? This topic. We're going to talk about traveling safely, and as more and more workplaces open up, more and more workers are starting to travel more for business, not just personal travel. But stuff we talk about applies to both worlds. I wanted to, and then that's what you focus on. You're really getting into personal protection, personal safety, just being prepared for certain types of situations. And so, talk a little bit about one, why you're in your vehicle, and and the whole backstory, because it's interesting, and what you're building out there where you are located now, and sort of like just how the whole preparedness mindset came about for you.
Sure. So we in October we bought a house with 22 acres. So basically we've been kind of trying to not do a full blown crazy prepper, but we're just trying to be prepared just in the event that we have extended power outages or something happens. I'm not planning for the next Ebola outbreak or some major catastrophe or EMP strike. It's just basics. We had, it can happen anytime. We had an ice storm and our power was out for 2 weeks. So,
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah, so we had to, adjust with a generator fuel and all this other stuff. So it can happen for anything. But anyway, we bought some acreage, so we got some chickens, and so we have like 20 chickens right now. And mind you, I've never lived in the country before or in any piece of land bigger than the size of a typical suburban lot or, apartment. So 20 chickens, we have 5 rabbits, and we're going to probably get some goats, and we have a pond. We just stocked with some fish, and it's just on and on and on. So it's a big drastic change in the mindset and just doing something you've never done before. But thank God for YouTube, because there's so many nice videos out there that teaches you how to do things. But yeah,
there are.
Yeah, and we bought a couple of school buses off of. They have these government auction sites for like local governments. So we bought a couple used school buses that were no longer in commission, really cheap. And so basically, what I was going to do was convert one of them into my office and use the other one for storage. And it's a lot cheaper than shipping containers. Plus, you can move it around whenever you want. But we ended up using the one I was going to use for my office and put the rabbits in there until we built out their rabbit hutch, or the little outside area that we're going to have them staying in, that I finally finished. And now we have 14 guinea chicks in the bus. I have to do a video on that, but these things are crazy. They're like mental.
Yeah, you're homesteading it out there.
Yeah, I'm a farmer, Ted. I have no idea what I'm doing, but yeah, I have to maybe do a video with the guineas. They're pretty crazy. Chickens are pretty funny. They're very social, but these guineas, I don't know. Have you ever seen one, a guinea?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, you're gonna have to send me a video because that'd be fun to watch.
They're nuts. Every time I go in there, they've been seeing me for a couple months now, feeding them every day, water. And they still run from me like I'm gonna kill them. They're mental. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
but
well, that's good. So you're also getting into, and not just your site. You have a section of your site that you've got some big plans for, and it kind of ties into sort of this whole preparedness approach and sharing and training others. Just as a recap for those who may not have heard you on the previous podcast, just high level, tell us a little bit about your background and why I'm talking to Shawn about this particular topic today.
Well, I have over 25 years of experience in military law enforcement, federal law enforcement, and private security contracting. I was in the Marines, police officer, corrections officer. I was a federal agent on the Secretary of Commerce Protection Detail, and then I worked overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan and Kuwait doing high-level protection for companies like Blackwater and some other ones. So I have a pretty broad and varied experience in security, and so I kind of take the training and my experience from all the different jobs I've had, and that's kind of like how I developed my mindset, my strategic mindset or outlook on security in general. So, and that's how I try to apply it with not only if I'm dealing with on a corporate level or school, but also just in personal safety or security in general.
Yeah, and everything, and what I love about your approach, and we've been talking about this for years. You've been talking to me about this for years. I picked up a lot about this, but you start with the mindset, right? And that mindset, and I'll let you dive into that here in a second, but that mindset sort of is the foundation for what we're going to talk about today, which is, whether it's domestic or international travel, especially for work, for employees, most of the time you're traveling alone. Maybe you're traveling with a large group to go to a conference or some sort of a work-related event. But, for those of you that travel for work, that travel alone, you're by yourself. So launch into the whole mindset. How does that fit with and support this mindset that you like to instill in people?
Well, like you said, mindset is so important because mindset, having the proper mindset or not having the proper mindset can mean the difference between life and death. And so if you're by yourself traveling, you have to have that mindset that you're always keeping an eye, being ready for anything. But more importantly, the thing about mindset is this: that if you're trapped in a situation to where you're in a life-threatening situation, whether it be a man-made disaster like a fire, like a forest fire or earthquake, or a natural disaster, or a man-made situation where maybe you're in a building and there's a fire, or an active shooter incident, and it's life-threatening. If you don't have the right mindset, it can cause you to not make the right decisions. It can cause you to give up. It can cause you to just do a lot of things you normally wouldn't do if you had the proper mindset. So basically, the mindset that I always try to push to people is like, look, you're going to be alone. No one's coming to help you. You got to get yourself out of this situation you're in. So if you're in an active shooter situation, or if you're like buildings on fire, you have to evacuate yourself. You have to get yourself to safety. You have to apply some type of traumatic first aid to yourself to keep you alive. And if there's people around you that can help you, then that's even better. But you can't depend on anybody for anything. The police, I love the police, but they might not reach you in time, especially if you work in a building that's huge and you're in the opposite end of the building, and the police only come in through the front entrance, and it can take forever to get there, and you could be trapped, and everybody else around you is also in the same situation, and no one's coming to help you. So you have to develop that strong mindset that you're going to protect yourself and get yourself out of this danger. And the main reason behind that is it's kind of like when you're a kid and it's Christmas Eve and you can't wait for Christmas to open up the presents, and you barely sleep and you're the first one up, and then all of a sudden your dad's down there at the Christmas tree and he's like, "Hey, sorry dude, Christmas is being canceled. We're going to have to wait maybe we'll open presents. Santa will be back in about 3 weeks, so maybe we'll open the presents up, or we'll just have to wait till next year. And, the kid will be devastated, right? So it's the same thing where if you have that mindset to where, okay, someone's coming to help me, and you're trapped, or there's a bad guy running around with a gun shooting everybody, and you're stuck in a closet someplace, and you think you're good to go, and you hear police in the background, you hear the sirens, and you hear maybe police conversating, and then you're like, okay, good, hey, they're coming, I'm good. But then all of a sudden their sounds become weaker and weaker and more in the distance, and next thing you know, they're going in the opposite direction of where you're at, or something else happened, or maybe they got hurt. And now guess what? Now you're stuck. Now you're depending on yourself again, and mentally, if you don't have the proper mindset, you might not be able to overcome that. So
yeah. And so this topic, I mean, that, and to think about how important that is for what we're going to talk about today, and sort of building on our last conversation on the podcast, you were talking about it in the context of, imagine in your workplace how that can happen. Take yourself out of the workplace, going to a city you may not have been before. Maybe you've been a couple times. Maybe it's a location that you're familiar with the immediate area, like where the hotel is and how to get to this location, like a satellite facility, one of your business's other locations. But I mean, other than that, you're not really too familiar with the area, with the local law enforcement, police, fire, EMS. And maybe you're traveling alone. Maybe you're with one other person. But take yourself out of your normal surroundings, and it compounds the problem potentially, and it makes that mindset that much more important. And that's just domestically. Imagine traveling to another country where the response is completely different, their protocols are completely different. So let's get into like traveling safely. Like what is other than mindset? Like what are some of the basics that we could share with the listeners?
So do you want to break it down with domestic travel and international travel?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start domestic and then go from there.
Okay, so domestically, if you're going to travel for business, obviously if there's a conference, or if you're just a lone person and you're traveling, doing sales calls or whatever, there's kind of different ways to approach this. So in a conference type setting, what type of conference is it? What type of people are going to be there? Is it high level, are the guests, is there some high net worth people there? Or is there people that are attending the conference that might have some, notoriety? Is there a potential that maybe somebody there could be a potential target for somebody who wants to, do some type of criminal or terrorist attack? So you got to think of those things. And then you kind of, you back plan like your security protocols, like what you're going to do. So if you travel in for a conference or individual basis, you have to do some, little research about the area that the conference is going to be in, or where you're going to be visiting. What kind of, security situation is it? What kind of crime situation? What kind of crime problem do they have there? And you could do, you can get on the internet and find out what police districts are in that area. A lot of police stations will have, or police websites will have like a crime map, and it gives a breakdown of, what's going on in that area. You can also call the police districts up that maybe work in the area where you're going to be, dealing with mostly, like the conference area. And you can kind of get an idea like, hey, you call them up, say, hey, what's the crime situation around here? I'm going to be coming here for a conference, and, I might have my family with me. They're going to be staying at the hotel. And, what do I need to look at? What areas do I need to stay out of? If there is crime there, what's the, what kind of type of crime is it? Is it mainly, theft, or is there robbery, or is there, whatever, Mm-hmm. So you do quick little research. You can go on the internet too, and you can check the news, the local news. And it's also not only just in the area where you're going to be staying at, but also just the general area of the city. Try to get an idea of how the city's set up, because I've been in cities all the time where I have no idea where anything's at, and let alone maybe the areas you want to stay out of, like the more high crime areas. the more dangerous areas. So just kind of do some basic research on that. Also, do the same thing where your hotel's at, or if you have any kind of planned, restaurants that you might want to go to, or any other kind of events, do the same thing. Find out where it's at, crime-wise. And what I also do too is, what I'm kind of telling you is stuff I used to do when I was a federal agent. When I would do an advance for the Secretary of Commerce, I would go out, just depending on where it was at. You might go out like a week in advance or a couple days, but you coordinate with the local law enforcement, and a lot of times they'll give you a lot of the information. But you had to do a lot of planning before you go. You had to find out where the hospitals are at. You had to find out, the location of your hotel, where the secretary is going to be staying at, and where whatever event they're going to be going to. And you got to have, know your routes. You got to know the area. So that way you know where everything's at, and you know what areas to stay out of. So going back to what I was saying before is when, find out the situation at the conferences, where you're going to be staying at, where you're going to be, whatever other functions, dinner, whatever. Find out the situation where that's at. Find out where the hospitals are at, the local hospitals. Even though if you say, okay, well, if something happens, I'm going to call 911 and the ambulance is going to come and get me. Well, what if you're in a situation where, maybe you have your rental car or something happen and you're hurt, but you can't wait for the ambulance and you need to get out of there. Do you know where the nearest hospital's at, or med center, or, police department's at? These are things you could do ahead of time before you go. And it might sound like being a little paranoid to some people to kind of think in those terms, but I look at it as being prepared, because you always got to expect something might happen. And it's better to know where these things are at ahead of time and actually have it planned out than to try to figure it out when something does happen. Now, and this goes for if you're traveling with your family too. Especially if you have your family, you're going to go to the amusement park or whatever, traveling to Disney World, and you got to kind of understand the same situation. The last thing you want to do is have your family in the rental car or the minivan, and you're going to go out to go get some food someplace, and you're just driving around, and next thing you know, you take the wrong turn, you have no idea where you're at, and you maybe you looked on Yelp and you found a restaurant you want to go to, and it has 4 or 5 stars, but to get to it, you got to go through a couple questionable areas. Next thing you know, you might put yourself in a situation where you could put yourself at risk and your family at risk because you didn't do some proper planning.
Right. Now you're talking about, in the context of what was interesting, what you were saying, in the context of, Secretary of Commerce and being on the protection detail, and that VIP, if you will, planning for that type of visit. But in this case, the mindset is, you're the VIP.
Sure.
You've got to do the homework. And in a recent episode, you were, I think it was titled "Defensive Driving," which was great, by the way. That I highly recommend folks listen to that, because it's defensive driving in a context that a lot of us don't like to think about, like road rage and somebody following you or something like that. So, and not like paranoid, like you said, just being paranoid or anything, but there are a lot of robberies where somebody follows you home from, let's say, the home improvement store. You buy several high dollar pieces of equipment or tools or something. You're going to work on a big project at home, and you're buying like a table saw, stuff that where somebody might be seeing you walk out with that stuff. They may follow you home, and maybe try to break into your garage later or whatever. It happens. It happens
all
more
the
than
time.
People think.
It happens
absolutely.
all the time. I could tell a little. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to tell you a little story about some older lady. She used to, I think she worked at a bingo hall, right, or whatever. And so every Saturday night when they had bingo, she would collect all her earnings, and then she would go back to her house. And so I guess what happened was some people were watching her and knew that was her habit, and they followed her home. And their intention was to rob her, but she had a gun, a concealed carry, I think.
Yeah.
And I think she she ended up fighting some of them off, but if I'm correct, I think they ended up killing her, right? And because they were following her patterns, right?
Right.
They knew what she was doing. They knew she had money. It's the same thing with what you're saying. They can, or if, let's just say you work for a company and you drive a nice car, and so someone's looking to rob somebody who they think might have some money. All they have to do is just watch you for a couple of days or a week and know your patterns, and just follow you home. And like you said, just wait till you get home, and then they can rob you.
Yeah, you're giving me an idea. I'm going to jot this down for another episode topic. See, this is why we should record every conversation we have, because it's great. It's rich with information. But of businesses that have service technicians or that deliver or receive valuable goods and have routes and patterns and that are predictable, and that gives a lot of times you have different types of crime, right? You have and it fits with workplace safety, because we're talking about in the context of work. But you have different types of criminals. You have criminals that are opportunistic. They're not really planning to rob you per se or your business per se, but they see an opportunity and they take advantage of it in that moment. So they may not have plotted it out or planned it out, but in general they're looking for an opportunity to take advantage of people. And then you have some that are like patient. They know, they're like, all right, this business has been here a while. I know how many vans they have. I know how many service trucks they have. I know where they go to lunch. I know where I can follow them. And then when they're at lunch, I know I can get into their toolbox, or I know where the job site is, or I know when they leave typically. And they'll study for a couple days or maybe even a week, but they're patient. And because they know that they have time to plan. So time is on their side, and you're just going about your business unaware. But this also applies to traveling. You could have folks, watching you, and all that good stuff. So defensive driving, the thing that reminded me of this was in that episode, you talked about this very scenario of, being in a rental car, and maybe you're in a place that you're not too familiar, and you're on this road that's maybe it's unmarked. You don't remember the name of it. We all rely on our, these smartphones to tell us where to go. And, maybe there's poor reception in that area. You took a turn, you overestimated or underestimated the turn, and you end up in the ditch and you're injured, and your cell phone may be working, may not be working. Do you remember the last mile marker? Do you remember the last cross street? How would you be able to communicate if you could reach somebody? How would you be able to communicate where you are? And so a lot of times, and I remember when I traveled all the time for work, I was in places I had never been before, and it took some time to get used to researching that stuff, and then planning my routes, making sure I was on main roads. Like if I could avoid back lonely roads as much as possible, I would. It's not always the case. So that's a great example of what you're talking about. A lot of times, we're going to we could very well end up in a situation where nobody is, or it's going to be a long time before somebody can find us.
Oh yeah.
So planning ahead is key.
Sure. And to piggyback off of what you were saying, targets of opportunity is kind of like what you're referring to, where a bad guy's just, it could be like a couple guys sitting in a mall parking lot during shopping season, and they're just waiting to see who they can, carjack or rob with all the stuff they're bringing back to their cars. Or it could be a planned attack where they sit there and they watch you and those are the worst ones, is the planned attacks. And they're watching you for X amount of time. But yeah, I mean, it's there's so many things you could do to just be more aware, like be more conscious. So when you're driving, always look in your rearview mirror. If you're at a conference, or if you're at a situation where you're going to be there for multiple days, don't take the same routes every day to and from. vary it up a little bit, leave at different times, because you might not be able to help where you have to go, but you can stop from being time and place predictable. Okay, so you can't help that you have to go to this place every day and be there by 8 o'clock, and so if a bad guy's probably not going to want to try to attack you or rob you at the location because there's too many people around, but they're going to try to figure out a place where they can get you before that, or on the way home. So don't take the same route. Try to take different routes, leave at different times. Mix it up as best you can, and that's difficult. And I forgot to mention something. So another thing that you could do, and you were talking about cell phone coverage and relying on your GPS to your phone telling you the direction. So one thing that I used to do too sometimes is I used to kind of write out so if I had to go someplace like from a hotel to a location, I might actually sit down and write out the turns that I need to take. So in the event that, something is wrong with the cell phone coverage or something didn't happen, I'd still have that ability to be able to, have like my directions written down. Or you could just do the old school way and pull out a big old map. A lot of people don't even know what that is anymore. I don't know, can you even get those?
I know.
And
you can, and I from time to time I'll look at one just to remind myself that I can, right? Because that's a lost skill.
Oh yeah, and what I used to do too, and this really helps out, is you pull out your iPhone or whatever phone you have and use your notes section, and you write down all your points of contact, like their phone numbers, and this could be, you can add the police in there, the hospital. You put the addresses of everything that you need to know, and you have it right there, and you label it in bold like police, and you have the police direct number, or 911 or whatever. I like having the direct numbers to the districts as well. That way, if you have a question, you can call the district up and not call 911, right? Because it's not an emergency. Mm-hmm. And you have the address written right underneath that. Same thing with a hospital. Same thing with your hotel. Same thing with all these different things you need to know. And then you can also get a aerial satellite imagery. I like using satellite, or you could use the typical map function, like from Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever, and you screenshot it, and then you can plot your points off. So you have like an aerial view of where you're. It gives you a better perspective of where everything's located at, distance wise and just in general. That way you can have like an idea. So you can plot down the police departments, you can plot down the hospitals, your hotel, wherever you're staying at. And you can also put other points in there of safe havens, right? So like if you're driving and you see somebody following you and you're not very close to a police department, but there's some other kind of place you can go to that's considered a safe haven where you can get to, and there's people around, then it could cause that person to not follow you anymore. So you could plot all this stuff, save it as a JPEG and stick it right on top of that note, or put it in your phone in general, and that way you could pull that up as a quick reference. You have all your stuff right there at the tip of your fingers. Even if your internet goes out, you still have all that stuff.
Sure. Nice. So that's traveling, not just locally, but certainly when you're on business travel, even with your family. So a lot of these things apply off the job as well. Understanding as much as you can about the location and plotting your route.
Sure.
So what else?
So, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, hotels, always when you check in, be cognizant of where you're staying at. The first floor is great for some reasons. Like if you have to get out, there's like an incident, like a fire, you can get out and you're on the ground floor. You don't have to worry about trying to go down the stairwell, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're also on the ground floor, depending on how the hotel's set up, then you're going to have a lot of people walking by your hotel room, and it's just, I don't like that so much because you just can't sleep well, but then it's also easier for somebody to get to you. So when you're staying at a hotel and you're up on a different floor, make sure you walk the stairwells to get out of there. Make sure you know where they exit to, and this is for in the event that there's a fire, or in the event that there's maybe some type of attack on the hotel, or you never know, right? Somebody could be doing something on a different floor, and you hear gunfire, like the shooting in Las Vegas. Imagine Imagine when had some guy
Yeah.
for shooting, sitting there, high-powered rifle shooting, and you're in the hotel room next to him, or the one right below or right above. I mean, imagine that. I mean, what would you be thinking? And like, should I stay or should I go? How do I get out of here?
Right.
So walk the stairwells. Just kind of if you have your family with you, like you have your son or whatever or daughter, make it a little fun little trip. Say, hey, let's go walk down these steps and see where they exit to. And in that way, when you're going down the steps, see if you can get in the other floors too. Like, see if you can go into the other floors. Do you need a key card to get in there? Will they allow you to get on the other floors, even though you're not on that floor? Some floors don't allow that. I mean, some hotels don't
Right.
allow that. And that's really important to know, because if you're on the 14th floor and there's a fire or there's some kind of incident going on and you need to get out of there, and you take that stairwell and you're trying to get down to the ground floor, but then all of a sudden one of the doors opens up further down and maybe there's some gunfire or something like that. Now you're like, oh crap, where can I go? And if you didn't properly recon that stairwell, you have no idea if you can get out of there or not. So you might be stuck. You either keep going down, or you have to go back up to your other floor. So
Yeah, and in the context of workplace safety, and safety professionals will get this. It fits exactly with, according to OSHA and NFPA. Like, there's three parts of the exit. There's access to the exit. There's the actual exit way, and then there's the exit discharge. So just breaking that down, I'm thinking, for safety pros, break it down the same way.
Sure.
Where is it located? How can I get to it? And have a backup, a secondary exit. The actual exit way, is it badged? Is it keyed? Or can I just push through the exit? And then the exit discharge. That's when you actually get outside. What you're saying is key is sometimes there could be multiple doors you have to pass through to actually get to the discharge part, right? So the exit way itself could be the first door you have to get through. Then you have to go down through some flights of stairs and get out another door. And then you have to consider the exit discharge. That is, what area does it dump me into? And how far do I have to travel to get out of that area? It could be the back alley. It could be in the basement parking garage where the loading docks are for the hotel or the conference center, and from there you've got to travel through that subterranean parking garage up a ramp to get out to the street, like in a fire or something like that. So you say recon, but yeah, you've got to know the access to the exit way itself, and the exit discharge where it's putting you. So those are great tips.
Oh yeah, and safety and security were on the same sheet of music, but for in the safety aspects, you're kind of looking at things. I'm looking at like a bad guy's trying to actively kill you and stuff. So it's
what a world! That's why half of our conversations, I was like, what a world you live in there. Half of our conversations we should be recording or documenting, because they're sometimes they're scary, but they're very informative, and most of the times they're pretty entertaining, though. To be honest with you, when we talk. So what about so let's stick with that, getting out of a building or out of a conference room or a hotel. But a lot of conferences, safety professionals, as conferences start up this summer, certainly going into next year after COVID, a lot of times you're either at the conference center, the hotel is adjacent to it, or it's right near there, and a lot of us will walk. We won't even get an Uber. We'll walk, because if the weather's nice, we'll get out of our hotel and we'll walk. What are some tips? And I know we especially if I'm traveling alone to a conference, a safety conference, I'm going to have, folks that are from other businesses, but they're all there. Is it good to create a cohort? Like, the first thing I should do is, all right, I'm going to get to know some people that are staying in my hotel that are also going to this conference, and I'm going to see if we can at least walk to and from together, because there's safety in numbers generally, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what are some good tips if I have to walk, and what are some things I should keep in mind?
Well, I just want to apologize to everybody. I don't have a stationary mic, so if I move around, you might hear the mic rustle. So, but No, you're exactly right. Safety in numbers, and that's not necessarily guaranteed to keep you from being a fallen victim to somebody,
Yep.
especially. But safety in numbers, because you know what, everybody's got to always remember that a human predator is just like an animal predator, right? They're gonna try to go for the easiest kill or easiest victim they can find. They're not gonna try to, attack or rob somebody who might give them a fight. So that means if there's multiple people in the group, the last thing they want to do is get in a situation where they're thinking that they have an easy target and then they end up getting overpowered or caught by the police. So, but that's not so in every case, especially if someone has a gun and they just shoot you first and ask questions later. But safety
Yeah.
in numbers. The big thing here is just like with what I was talking about driving. Know your walking route, okay, and,
Yep.
and you could do the same thing. Before you go there, right? You call the hotel up, say, "Hey, look, I'm staying at the hotel connected to the convention center, and can you walk from the hotel to the convention center? Is there walkways? Like, do I have to walk outside? And if so, when I walk out of the main entrance of the hotel, which way do I go? You can call and find that out. You can get on Google Maps and go to the Street View and figure it out
Hmm.
that way, because you know how some convention centers or whatever conference centers, they're connected to the hotels. They have like those breezeways that are off the ground,
Yep.
or but you can kind of do some research and figure out how far you have to walk. But always know your walking route. So that means if you get there the day before, or get there a few hours before everything starts, just do a little quick walk yourself, figure it all out. And because if your conference ends a little bit later in the afternoon or in the evening, which gives a lot more people more time to get out there and be ready to stalk on people. Because a lot of bad guys, they won't hit you up early in the morning. They don't want to get
Yep.
up early. So know your routes. And if you're walking with people, being that you guys are safety professionals, you should have this in the mindset anyway. So now you got to kind of switch over to the security mindset, right? Like, hey guys, look,
Right.
when we're walking, I'm gonna, let's everybody pay attention to the area around them. Let's make sure, if we're standing, waiting to cross the road, we're all being able to cover an area. That way we're not all looking in the same direction and somebody can sneak up behind us and stick. You're looking around, everybody's paying attention. That way everybody can alert. And plus, the big point of that is, if you're looking like you're paying attention and everybody's on point, then that's a deterrent factor in itself, right? Because if somebody can spot a guy coming at them from a couple 100 feet or 100 feet away, and they can alert, and then people can do whatever to get away from that situation, then it's just like a lion trying to sneak up on an antelope, and then he's trying to be all quiet, and then the antelope hears him and takes off. Well, is the lion going to continue to run after him if he's too far away? No. They're going to be like, okay, well, I got to go wait for this
Just sneak up on somebody
I
else.
got to go wait for this crippled one I saw over there that looked like he has disease, and I didn't really want to eat the diseased one, so I wanted to get that younger one that's the meat's better, but
You got to think like a lion.
gotta think
But,
like a lion.
You just
Oh
reminded me of something.
wait, hold on.
Yeah, what's up?
This now you just said that, and whenever you go anywhere, you ever do anything, have the mindset of what a bad guy's looking for. Right, like what?
Right, yeah,
what do
we've
they
talked
think
about this
that?
a lot.
Yeah, and
Think like a criminal.
yep. And if you do that, that's gonna. If you put your mindset in, like thinking like how that person would think, and what they're looking for as far as weaknesses, and then try not to do what they're looking for. What?
Yeah, and that's, dude. You brought up, and that's exactly what I was going to say before you mentioned that. Was I was down in New Orleans at a conference, VPPPA conference, downtown New Orleans. NOLA. Not impressed, by the way. I've never been there. I mean, no offense to New Orleans or any of the folks down there, but I don't know. I don't know what I expected. I thought I saw all the movies and Mardi Gras and Bourbon Street, and I'm like, yeah, this is
Pretty dirty.
This is not my thing. Yeah, it's not my jam. Not at all. So, okay, so we stayed at a hotel down the road from the convention center, and we walked every day. We would walk back and forth, and so there was a group that you normally you would walk down the down the actual sidewalk along one of the main streets, and then you turn on another cross street and you go around. Well, the way the city block was laid out, with all the buildings, there are little alleys between buildings that you can go, right? So I saw a lot of folks like, I'm not going to walk around, take the long way around, but stay visible, stay on the main road where all the people are with my group. I'm going to cut through these back alleys where service vehicles are parked with the flashers on, unloading a truck, and then I'm going to walk back there. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Stay visible, stay on the main route. That's not going to completely prevent something from happening, but that's what you were saying was, think about it. If I'm going to try to stick somebody up, I mean, it's not that it doesn't happen, it does, but the likelihood of it happening to me when I'm put myself in a mix with a bunch of other people, right? It's sort of like options, right? If somebody's going to stick somebody up, I want them to have many more options to pick from that I might not be the one they pick because I'm diluting myself. I'm going to put myself where there's more people, and I'm going to stay on the main road. If somebody is like, I'm going to rob somebody, and then I go and cut through that alley, I might be the only one walking. That I'm their only option. I may be the one that they pick. So it's like the lottery. But what are your thoughts, like, staying, not avoiding those types of back alleys and cutting through and trying to take a shortcut, but I separate myself from the population and I put myself alone somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it just all depends on okay, so stateside, right? So safety in numbers, yep. Right? But like, let's just say you're walking down the street and you're with 20 other guys, right? Guys and girls, and you're all dressed with suits on, and if you were like in certain areas, I would say, oh, that's not a good idea, because now you're a big target for like a terrorist type attack, right? Like, okay, there's 20 people, I can just plow them over with my car, right? But in a situation like just a typical stateside type mindset, stick to the main crowded streets, right, where there's plenty of people around, because, remember, it's all about, can that bad guy get away with it? Would it be easier for them to rob you in an alleyway or on the main street where there's people around and probably police presence, because, because it is in the area where there's tourists and things like that, they're probably patrol it a lot more. It's safer to do that, right? But let's just talk about when you're walking down the street in general, right? What to do. So it's no different than when you're driving your car. When you're driving your car, you always want to look out as far ahead as possible, so that way you can potentially see any incidents, any kind of stopped vehicles, anything like that, so it gives you more reaction time. Because reaction time, or having time and distance, are your friends when it comes to anything, right? You need to have more time, you need to have more distance to react to whatever's going on. So when you're walking down the street and you're sitting there talking to your buddies, keep looking out ahead. Look out at least a block ahead of you. Look and see if you see any potential threats standing around. And this could be, a couple of dudes standing on the corner, because you got to remember, just because you're walking with people, it doesn't necessarily mean you're out of danger. Now, these guys, they know there's a lot of foreigners coming in from out of town. There could be tourists running around, and you know how people they'll walk around with cameras and have money on them and everything like that, and they're just easy targets because they have no idea what to look for. And there's plenty of predators hanging out to see who they can, rob or whatever. So always be looking out ahead, looking at the street corners, looking, homeless people are another group to look out for, because you never know what they might do when you walk by them. They might, because a lot of homeless people, they have mental health issues, and they could be on drugs, and there could be a mixture of everything. And then, they might snap on you. They might, approach you and start asking for something, and be aggressive. And then, don't put yourself in that situation. So look out ahead. If you see any potential threats, then you can say, hey, look, hey guys, let's cross the street right here. Or being that your safety professionals you're with, hey guys, hey, you see those two dudes up there? See them looking at us? See how they got their hands in their pockets? Hey, let's, that could be something's going on. Hey, let's cross the street here, or hey, let's turn around and go around the block. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
look out ahead. Same thing with, if you have to go down an alleyway or like a little side street that's not, heavily trafficked with people or cars, you do the same thing. Make sure you're looking down there. If there's an alley, make sure you're looking behind things, your trash cans, et cetera, et cetera. Just always look out ahead, look for threats, and then, if you gotta like be late, then take that detour and go around the block. Right? It's not worth it because you never know. Right?
You're reminding me of the color code. Colonel, now you caught me with a brain fart. I'm not going to remember his name, but
Colonel.
The color condition, like condition white, condition yellow, condition red, condition black. A lot of people are walking around in condition white, just completely unaware, just staring at their phone, walking down the street, not even paying attention. Not to nothing.
Oh, the phones are a big one, right? Everybody's and I
big distraction.
I do that too sometimes. I try not to, but yeah.
Now you reminded me of a story. I was traveling with my family. We had the camper, and I don't know if we talked about this. You and I talked about it a couple times, but I don't know. I don't think we talked about it on the podcast. But so we're traveling. We're going through a city, and we had to stop off. Wife had to use the bathroom. And so, funny thing with COVID, we don't go into these facilities anymore. We stop off at a gas station, I gas up. We use the bathroom in the camper, so because it's fully equipped, it's got a full kitchen and all that stuff. So that's actually a plus.
And
right?
cleaner,
so
and cleaner.
It is definitely cleaner.
Yeah.
So what happened was, it was like we had to stop. It was like I'm like I don't know about this area. I don't know if I should stop here. It was we had to go. Right, we were at that critical point in time. So I pulled off, and immediately what happened was this gas station. It was a BP station to my left. So as so you have to go past it. It was on a corner, so you had to go past it, make a left turn at the light, and then turn left into the gas station. And so as I'm passing it to get to the light, I'm looking to my left. I'm looking at the gas station, and I noticed like 4 or 5, 1, 2, 3. There were like 2 on one side of the BP building station where you walk in and buy all your junk and whatnot. And then there were about 2, or maybe there was 3. But there were only 4 when I pulled in. There were grown adult males, right, that were just leaning up against the wall, foot up on the wall, just hands in pockets, just looking around, just hanging out. And I'm like, man, and there was 1 car getting gas. I mean, there were more people loitering than there were customers at that point. So I was like, immediately, I was like, oh man, this is not going to be fun. So I pulled in, I approached a pump. Like I was going to fill up, and I pulled all the way forward. It was the pump on the very end, so I was able, if I had to, I was able to just keep driving forward and then snake out onto the main road, make a right, and get back onto the highway. Well, I let my wife out. She gets out of the car. She gets into the camper, and I shut the door, and I'm standing there like by my gas tank, like right between the camper and the vehicle. My son's in the back seat. Behind the driver or passenger side. So I'm on that side, right? And I'm just looking. I'm doing like you're saying. I'm looking ahead. I'm scanning. I'm watching these individuals. Sure enough, I see 2 individuals to my right, talking like, nodding in my direction, talking. I could tell they were like talking like about where I was and, my general area. Because you could tell physical body language and everything. And I'm like, as soon as I saw that, I banged on the door. I'm like, yeah, hon, you got to hurry up. And sure enough, one of the individuals starts walking in my direction. And this is a about 25-foot long travel trailer, and then I have a 17-foot long vehicle. And I'm right at the rear of the vehicle at this point. And so he starts approaching. He didn't even get to the rear of the camper. I could tell there was nobody else around. There were no vehicles around. It was not like, oh, he's going to his vehicle that's parked in the pump next to me. Nothing was around, and he's making eye contact with me. I had my sunglasses on, so I can like turn my head a little, but there was no way they were seeing where my eyes were looking, right? So I just put my hand up, and I said, and just shook my head, no. like, and held my hand up like, stop. And he stops. And he goes, can I ask you a question? I said, no. I wasn't rude, but I was very firm. I was like, no. And he was like, well, I just want to ask you a question. I said, no, I don't want anybody near me right now. Now, thank God I use the excuse, because it's socially rude, if you think about it, to just tell people to stop walking towards you and like, no, you don't ask me a question. But I knew the situation. I knew what was happening. Okay. So as he's standing there and he repeats, can I just ask you a question? I notice two of the other individuals had changed their position. One was walking out into the field of pumps, like the rows of gas pumps, but there were no other cars over there. And he's walking around to my left. So I've got this guy to my right. I'm standing in front of a pump. And then another gentleman about 3 rows over is walking to my left. And immediately, Shawn, I thought of you first thing I did. I was like, oh, Shawn would be proud of me. I'm like, this guy's going to flank me. This guy on my right's going to distract me. This guy's going to come around behind me to my left. So I never turned my back on these individuals. I kept both of them in view. And so thank God for COVID. I totally used COVID. I said, no, I don't have a mask. This guy had a mask on. He had a little surgical mask and stuff. And I said, no, I don't have my mask on. I just don't want anybody near me right now. And he's like, well, can I just ask you? I said, no, I don't want anybody near me. He's like, man, you don't have to be rude. He starts getting like belligerent. And I'm like, man, and my first thought is, man, who the heck are you? You come bothering me, and then you act like I've got the attitude when I don't want to be bothered, right? So I said, no, man, I'm cool. I just don't have my mask. I don't want anybody near me. And he started walking back toward the vehicle, and right then my wife came out. We got in the vehicle, boom, took off. But, man, everything, that you talk about and that we've talked about in the past, just you and me one-on-one, it was like, that's useful stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You got to pay attention.
Yeah, and I actually did use that on my podcast as an example, one of the things. But, no, you're absolutely right. Now, just think if you pulled into that gas station and you didn't look at those guys, right, and you're all consumed with hurrying up, getting your wife out of the vehicle so she can go to the bathroom, and you're all like, oh, we got to make this time, and, we got to just, you got to do this detour, and now we're going to be 10 minutes behind schedule and blah, blah, blah. And you're not even thinking about, what could potentially happen to you, like most people are. You could have been a victim, right? You could have been robbed. God knows what could have happened to your family, because those guys were not up to any good. And you stood your ground with them. And they, because of your mannerisms and the way that you presented yourself, right? Your body language, as well as the way you talked to them, everything, the way you were looking, they knew that there was something different about you, and either A, you would fight them, or maybe possibly you could be armed and they don't know that, right? Because, and that's the thing. But,
it's, what do they call that? Command presence? It's a confidence, right?
Yeah.
You just got to be confident. And you said it earlier, time and distance are your friends. I didn't want that individual getting any closer than they'd already. As soon as I knew they were coming in my direction, I'm like, I gotta prevent them from coming into my space. Sure. Like what I would consider my safe zone, my safety space, my safety zone.
Now, what else did you have between you and a couple of them, right? You had your vehicles, right? You had some objects between. So that all, you got to think of that too. If you have to deal with somebody, or if
you can put yourself on the other side, of an object. Yeah.
Yep. That way it gives you more time, right? Because they're coming at you, and they have to get around a vehicle or a light post or a tree or trash cans. It's going to give you more time to react, right?
Yeah.
So body language is so important, right? Because a criminal is they're generally pretty good about judging character, right? Like
reading people,
reading people, and being able to see who a potential good victim could be just by how that person's acting. So you get the typical suburban male, right? Maybe a guy or girl that's never been in any kind of dangerous situation in their life, and they don't like violence, they don't like guns, they never even done any self-defense or never been in a fight, and they're going to act different than a guy or a girl who's been exposed to things like that, right? And just the way that person stands and looks versus the other one, and the confidence, right? And the look of knowing, right? That bad guy can look at that, because criminals are con artists, right? And that's their whole livelihood, is trying to con people. That's why he walked up and he said, "Hey man, can I ask you a question?" He was getting ready to try to con you. Either he was just going to ask you for money, or he was going to try to rob you.
Money.
I don't know, man. I think they were going to rob you, dude.
I know. Well, when I saw the
why would they have multiple guys? They were going to rob you.
Yeah.
They were probably going to try to steal your truck while you were.
They were positioning. It was weird. Because when I traveled, when I was a consultant, I would get approached like that almost at every stinking gas station. I'm telling you, gas stations are sketchy. I hate gas stations, especially gas stations in areas you're not familiar with, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you could tell, but yeah, they would try to approach me all the time, and it was always, "Oh, my wife's on the exit over here. We ran out of gas." It's always the same story. There's people running out of gas all over the damn country.
Oh,
I'm telling you.
I look at him and say, "Dude, I don't have any money," even though I might have I
don't carry cash.
Yeah, dude, I don't have any money, man. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Going back
but
to...
look, I mean, I think you're right. They're con artists, but you don't, and the fact that you don't know, I like to think that, they do this all the time. They're just asking for money or whatever. But this guy actually looked shocked when I stopped him dead. I put my hand up and said, "No."
Well, yeah.
And he was just stopped, because most people, they don't want to be rude. They take advantage of that. They're good at what they do. These aren't just some uneducated, some people standing around going, "Maybe I'll ask this guy for money." This is their job. They know how to do this.
Well, they might not have some might not have education.
Yeah, they don't have a PhD maybe.
However, they have a PhD in street skills and reading people and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, so let's piggyback off of what we were talking about when you're walking down the street with your buddies at the conference, and you say, "Hey, look, you guys, hey, Fred, you watch the back, and Johnny, you watch over to the right, and I'll watch the left, and Ricky, you watch the front." That way when we're walking, we'll all, we got a 360-degree view of coverage, right? So, in the event that you're with your family, and especially if you have even little kids, you can help. But if you got older kids or your wife or whatever, "Hey, honey, hey," and you're talking to your son, "Hey, Ricky Bobby, hey, look, when I'm pumping gas, I want you
Ricky Bobby.
Crack the window a little bit, and I want you to look around and make sure, you're paying attention. If you see anybody coming at the car, let me know, right?" And then while you're pumping that gas, you're always looking around. I always put my back to the gas pump, because no one's going to come at me from the gas pump, and I'm looking around, Yeah. But, get your family involved, get your friends involved, and being, more aware and be more observant, you know what I mean? And plus, when you're doing that, like I said, it leads into the fact that, that bad guy's going to be scanning that situation. And then if they think that, everybody's paying attention, then it could be a deterrent just for that. You know what I mean?
These are all great tips to help us stay safe when we travel. I talk a lot about workplace safety on my podcast, but personal safety, personal protection, there's a huge part of workplace safety, especially when traveling. So I want to tell all the listeners and those that are watching, by the way, we're recording a video of this. And so this full video will be on the Safety Pro Podcast community site. If you're a premium member, you get access to the full video. Sean's going to tell me a story. I've heard this a couple of times, but I love this story, and it fits with travel safety. And it'll be a great setup for our next discussion when we can talk about international travel. But Shawn, you and your dad, which is kind of interesting, and you'll be able to talk about this, were stranded in Iraq during wartime and had to smuggle yourselves out of that country. So I want Shawn to tell us that story, and that is going to be available exclusively on the Safety Pro Podcast community site for premium members.